The grand hall of the Valerian Embassy glittered with opulence, its high ceilings adorned with shimmering crystals that reflected the soft glow of ambient lights. The air was thick with the scent of exotic perfumes and the low hum of sophisticated conversation. Nara moved gracefully through the crowd, her presence an intoxicating blend of allure and confidence. Dressed in a sleek silver gown that hugged her figure, she exuded an effortless charm that captivated the influential diplomats mingling around her. Her emerald eyes sparkled with mischief as she engaged in light banter, all the while discreetly transmitting data to her command center. "Did you hear about the latest proposal from Zyron?" A portly diplomat murmured, his voice laced with concern. "They've been pushing for a trade agreement that could destabilize our economy." Nara leaned in, her voice a sultry whisper. "I wouldn't trust anything that comes from Zyron. Their intentions are never as transparent as they seem." She let the words hang in the air, watching the unease ripple through the group. As she moved away, she activated her discreet communication device, her pulse steady despite the charged atmosphere. "Commander Ligia, I've gathered intel on Zyron's diplomatic maneuvers. They're attempting to sway our allies," she reported, her voice low to avoid detection. "Good work, Nara. Continue to blend in and gather more information. We need to know their plans." Ligia's voice crackled through the earpiece, heavy with the weight of their mission. "The balance between our worlds hangs by a thread." Nara's heart raced at the importance of her task. As she swirled her glass of luminescent liquid, she caught sight of a figure lurking at the edge of the hall, a tall, imposing man clad in dark attire, his eyes scanning the room with predatory intensity. Her instincts flared. He was a Zyron agent, no doubt sent to monitor the event. Just as she turned to slip away, their eyes met, and an unsettling chill ran down her spine. She feigned nonchalance, engaging a nearby diplomat in dialogue, but her mind raced. The gala was no longer just a diplomatic affair, it was a battlefield where she was both hunter and hunted. Minutes later, as she made her way to the balcony for a breath of fresh air, she felt the rush of air behind her. Nara turned just in time to see the Zyron agent closing in. "You've been quite the little spy tonight," he said, his voice smooth yet laced with menace. Nara's thoughts raced. "And you've been quite the little shadow," she replied, a smirk playing on her lips. "What is it you want? A dance, or perhaps a drink? I promise, I'm not as dangerous as you might think." The agent's expression hardened, and Nara knew she had to act quickly. With a swift motion, she slipped past him, her instincts propelling her into the crowded hall. The agent followed, but she was fast, weaving through the throng of guests, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she ducked into a dimly lit alcove, pressing herself against the wall as she watched him search for her. Just as he turned, she slipped away, her mind racing with the implications of his presence. She needed to report back immediately. Once she reached the safety of her private quarters, Nara hurriedly activated her communication device. "Commander, I've run into a Zyron agent. He's on to me. I need my next assignment now," she urged, urgency lacing her voice. "Understood. You'll be infiltrating Zyron's government," Ligia replied, her tone grave. "They're planning something major, and we need eyes inside. But Nara, be cautious. Emotional entanglements can be dangerous." Nara clenched her jaw, the weight of her mentor's warning settling heavily upon her. She had faced adversity before, but this mission was different. The complexity of her task loomed large, and the thought of entangling herself in Zyron's web was both thrilling and terrifying. As she prepared for the next phase of her mission, she couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes had never been higher. The fate of Valeria, and possibly the universe, depended on her success. With a deep breath, she steeled herself for the challenges ahead, knowing that the line between duty and desire would soon blur in the shadowy depths of Zyron's regime. Nara stood at the entrance of the dimly lit conference room, her heart racing with anticipation. The air was thick with tension as she adjusted her sleek, black attire, designed to blend seamlessly into the shadows of Zyron's elite. Inside, the high-ranking officials gathered around a long, polished table, their voices hushed but urgent. She took a deep breath, channeling her training, and slipped into the room unnoticed. "The prototype will be operational within weeks," a voice declared, cutting through the murmurs. Nara recognized it as General Kren, a prominent figure known for his ruthless strategies. Leaning against the wall, She positioned herself to hear every word. With this weapon, we can obliterate Valeria's defenses in a single strike. Their attempts at diplomacy will be rendered meaningless. Nara's pulse quickened. The weapon they were discussing was more than just a tool of war. It was a catalyst for destruction. She needed to gather as much information as possible. As she peered around the room, her gaze landed on Drax, the charismatic leader of Zyron, seated at the head of the table. His presence commanded attention, and an unintended thrill surged through her. She shook it off, reminding herself of her mission. Suddenly, Drax's eyes caught hers, and a smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Ah, Nara," he said, his voice smooth like silk. "Join us. We could use your insights on the Valerian strategies." The officials turned to her, surprise flickering in their eyes. Nara fought to maintain her composure. "Of course, Drax," she replied, gliding toward the table with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I have some thoughts on their recent movements." As she spoke, she subtly manipulated Drax's admiration for her. "You know, with the right information, we could outmaneuver them completely," she suggested, letting her voice linger on the last word, her eyes locked with his. "Perhaps I could gain access to the restricted areas where the weapon is being developed?" Drax leaned forward, interest piqued. "You're not only beautiful but cunning too, Nara. I admire your ambition. Let me see what I can do to facilitate your access." A thrill of success coursed through her veins. Nara knew she was playing a dangerous game, but the stakes had never been higher. She needed to uncover the truth, even if it meant getting entangled in Drax's world. Later that evening, in the dim light of Drax's private quarters, Nara found herself grappling with her emotions. The walls were adorned with artwork depicting Zyron's proud military victories, a stark reminder of the regime's oppressive nature. She paced nervously, her mind racing. This was supposed to be a mission of intelligence, not of feelings. "Nara, are you all right?" Drax's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood by the window, the moonlight casting an ethereal glow around him. "You seem distant." She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I'm fine, just processing everything." "Processing?" He stepped closer, concern etched on his features. "You're more than a mere diplomat to me. I see potential in you, a spark that could ignite change." Nara felt her resolve wavering. Drax's sincerity was disarming. "I'm here to serve my planet, Drax," she said, forcing herself to remain professional. "But I can't ignore what I see happening here." He tilted his head, studying her. "You think I'm blind to the suffering of others? I want to protect Zyron." Their eyes locked, and the weight of their unspoken connection hung in the air. It was a moment of vulnerability, an unexpected intimacy that made her pulse race. Nara stepped back, struggling to regain her composure. "I need to focus on my mission," she whispered, though her heart betrayed her. But before she could retreat further into her mind, a loud crash echoed from outside, jolting them both. Nara's instincts kicked in, and she moved toward the door. "We need to see what that was." As they emerged into the corridor, the atmosphere shifted. Security personnel rushed past, their faces grim. Nara's heart sank. Her opportunity to gather intelligence was slipping away. She had to find the hidden chamber she'd overheard about, the one that housed the weapon blueprints. She turned to Drax, desperation creeping into her voice. "We should go check on the situation. I might be able to help." "Stay close to me," Drax ordered, his commanding presence enveloping her. Together, they navigated the chaos, unaware that danger lurked just around the corner. As they reached a sealed door, Nara's breath quickened. This was it, the entrance to the chamber. Drax's hand rested gently on the panel, and he glanced at her. "Are you ready for what lies beyond?" Nara nodded, determination flooding her veins. "I have to know." With a swift motion, Drax activated the door, and as it slid open, a world of secrets lay before them. But even as exhilaration coursed through her, an ominous sense of dread settled in her gut. She was stepping deeper into a web of deceit, where every revelation could lead to betrayal. Nara sat on the cold metal bench of her dimly lit cell, the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The walls, slick and gray, seemed to close in on her, but she forced herself to focus. This was not the end, It was merely a new stage in her game. She had always been a master manipulator, and now she would turn that skill against the very regime that sought to break her spirit. The guards outside her cell were a mix of bored and alert, their eyes occasionally drifting to her with a hint of suspicion. Nara could sense their doubts, the cracks in their loyalty to Drax's government. She leaned back against the wall and waited for the right moment to strike. "Hey, you think she's really a spy?" one of the guards whispered, glancing over his shoulder as if the walls had ears. "Of course she is," replied the other, a burly man with a scar across his cheek. "Drax wouldn't have bothered to take her alive otherwise. She's a risk." "Still, she's pretty," the first guard muttered, a hint of hesitation in his voice. "What if she's just playing us?" Nara smiled to herself. The seeds of doubt were sprouting. She leaned forward, her voice low but confident. "You know, I hear Drax has been making some questionable decisions lately. Maybe you should be asking yourselves if he's really worth following." Both guards turned to her, surprise etched on their faces. The burly guard narrowed his eyes. "What do you know about Drax?" "Oh, I know a lot," Nara replied, her tone smooth as silk. "He has his ambitions, but what about you? What about the lives you're risking every day for a man who doesn't even see you as more than a pawn?" The first guard shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his companion. "You're just trying to get inside our heads. Am I? Or am I just showing you the truth?" Nara's voice was laced with honey, and she could see the conflict in their eyes. "You should think about what happens when you're no longer useful to him. The regime doesn't care about you, not really. It's all about power." Just then, the door swung open, and Drax stepped inside, his presence commanding the room. The guards straightened, their loyalty immediately returning at the sight of their leader. Nara felt a surge of both fear and exhilaration. This was the moment of reckoning. "Leave us," Drax ordered, his voice a low growl. The guards hesitated but finally stepped out, leaving Nara and Drax alone in the dim light. He leaned against the wall, watching her with a mix of curiosity and frustration. "You think you can manipulate them?" he asked, crossing his arms. "You're a spy, Nara. That's what you do." "Is that all I am to you?" she retorted, her eyes flashing with defiance. "Just a tool to be used?" Drax's expression softened slightly, but he quickly masked it with a cool demeanor. "You're more than that. You're intriguing. But your methods are reckless." "Reckless? Or just honest?" Nara challenged, leaning forward. "You're starting to have doubts, aren't you? About your government, about your place in it." He hesitated, the flicker of uncertainty visible in his eyes. "What do you know about my doubts?" "Enough to know that you're not as loyal as you pretend to be," she said, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "You don't have to follow the path laid out for you. There are other ways. Ways that don't involve war and destruction." Drax pushed off the wall, stepping closer to her. "And what do you suggest?" Nara took a deep breath, the weight of her own deceit pressing down on her. "Help me. Together, we could expose the truth about the weapon project. We could change the course of this conflict." His gaze searched hers, a battle of wills unfolding in the silence. "Why should I trust you?" "Because, Drax," she replied, her voice softening, "trust is a two-way street. If you have doubts, you're already halfway there." He remained silent, and in that moment, Nara felt a surge of hope. Perhaps there was a path forward, one that didn't lead to destruction. Just as she began to feel the warmth of possibility, the door swung open again, and the guards returned, interrupting the fragile connection they had forged. "Drax, we need to talk," one of the guards said urgently, his face pale. "There's been a disturbance." Drax shot Nara one last look, a mixture of frustration and something unspoken passing between them before he stepped into the hallway, his authority reasserted. As the door closed behind him, Nara leaned back against the wall, her mind racing. She had planted the seeds of doubt within the guards, but now she needed to figure out her next move. She could feel the weight of the choices ahead of her, knowing that the lines of loyalty were about to be tested in ways she had never anticipated. Nara stood in the dimly lit hideout of the rebel faction, the air thick with tension and the scent of burnt metal from makeshift equipment. The walls were adorned with hastily drawn maps of Zyron, dotted with red markers indicating critical points of interest. Around her, the rebels discussed their plans in hushed whispers, their faces a mix of determination and anxiety. She felt the weight of her dual identity pressing heavily on her shoulders, both an agent of Valeria and an unexpected ally to those who opposed Drax's regime. "Are you sure we can trust you, Nara?" asked Leaf, a tall rebel with a scar running down his cheek. His mistrust was palpable, and Nara understood his hesitation. She had been the enemy just days ago. "I've seen the weapon plans," Nara replied, her voice steady. "Drax may be the face of Zyron, but he's not the one pulling the strings. If we expose the project, we can turn the tide." The room fell silent as the rebels absorbed her words. She could see the flicker of hope in their eyes, but it was quickly replaced by skepticism. "Expose it to whom?" "The people," a woman named Mira interjected, her arms crossed defiantly. "The council has silenced dissent for too long. They control the media, and we don't have the resources to counter them." "Not yet," Nara replied, her mind racing. "But if we create a distraction, something big enough to draw attention, we can slip the information into the public eye." "Like what?" Leaf pressed, his brows furrowing in thought. Nara's gaze drifted to a map pinned on the wall. "The annual Zyronian festival is just days away. It's the perfect moment to make our move. Everyone will be there. Citizens, officials, even Drax himself." Myra's expression softened slightly. "And what do you propose we do? Crash the festival?" "Not crash," Nara corrected. "We'll stage a demonstration. A peaceful protest turned chaotic. It will be the perfect cover to reveal the council's plans to the masses." Leaf nodded slowly, the idea resonating with him. "If we can get the right tech in place, we could broadcast the evidence during the festival. People need to see the truth." "Exactly," Nara said, a surge of adrenaline coursing through her. "We'll expose the weapon project while the council is distracted." As the planning deepened, Nara felt a sense of camaraderie grow among the group. They shared stories and strategies, and for the first time since her arrival on Zyron, she felt a flicker of belonging. Yet, deep down, her mind was torn. Every moment spent with the rebels brought her closer to a truth she knew was coming: the confrontation with Drax. Later that evening, Nara found a moment of solitude in a small corner of the hideout. She pulled out her comm device, hesitating before contacting Drax. The thought of reaching out to him felt like treason, yet she needed to know where he stood. "Drax, it's Nara," she whispered into the device, her heart racing. There was a pause before his voice crackled through. "Nara? Where are you? I've been worried. I'm safe. But we need to talk. I've uncovered something important about the council." "What is it?" His tone shifted from concern to urgency. "They're not just planning a weapon. They're controlling you, Drax. You're being used as a puppet while they plot war." Silence hung between them, heavy and uncertain. "What do you mean?" "They've been manipulating you from the start. If you want to help your people, you need to break free from their grasp." Nara could almost hear the gears turning in Drax's mind. "I want to believe you, but I have my duties." "Your duties are to your people, not to the council. They don't care about the Zyronians. They care about power. I can help you expose them," she urged, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "I'll think about it," he finally replied, though she could hear the doubt woven through his words. As the communication ended, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over Nara. She was playing a dangerous game, flirting with the line between allegiance and affection. The thought of Drax, his passion for his people and his struggle against the council, made her heart ache. How could she betray him when the truth of his situation might be the key to saving them all? The days leading to the festival passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Nara immersed herself in the rebel plans, but her mind often drifted back to Drax. She couldn't shake the feeling that their paths were destined to intertwine again, and when they did, the consequences would be irrevocable. As the festival day approached, she felt like a storm was brewing, a tempest of emotions, loyalties, and the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. The gravity of her choice loomed ahead, and she knew that soon, she would have to confront not only Drax but also the truth of her own heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an ominous glow over Zyron's capital, Nara stood in front of the mirror in her private quarters, adjusting her attire for the rally. The weight of the impending confrontation pressed heavily on her shoulders. She had just revealed the conspiracy to Drax, and now they were both on the precipice of a decision that could alter the fate of their worlds. "Are you ready?" Drax's voice carried a mix of concern and determination as he entered the room, his eyes searching hers for reassurance. Nara turned to face him, her heart racing. "I don't know if I can do this, Drax. What if the Council doesn't listen? What if they see us as traitors?" He stepped closer, his presence both comforting and electrifying. "We must take the risk. If we don't act now, Zyron will become a nightmare for Valeria and its own citizens. You've seen the blueprints. It's worse than we imagined." Nara nodded, recalling the chilling designs she had uncovered. "But if we expose the Council, it could lead to chaos. The people are already restless. They might not react the way we hope." Drax reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm, igniting a spark that sent shivers down her spine. "Trust in the truth. The people deserve to know what's happening behind closed doors. With your voice, we can rally them to our cause." Her resolve began to solidify. "All right, we'll go through with the plan. But you have to promise me that you'll be careful." A flicker of something deeper passed between them, an unspoken understanding, as he nodded. "I promise. But you must also stay safe. If the Council suspects us—" "I know," she interrupted, steeling herself. "I'll be cautious. We'll do this together." As the rally commenced, the square filled with citizens, their murmurs of discontent rising like a tide. Nara stood at the edge of the platform, her heart pounding in rhythm with the crowd's anticipation. Drax took his place beside her, and together they faced the gathering. She could feel the energy crackling in the air, a mix of fear and hope that resonated with her own inner turmoil. "People of Zyron," Drax's voice boomed, commanding attention. "Today, we gather not just as citizens of this great planet, but as guardians of our future." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Nara noticed the unease in their eyes. She stepped forward, feeling the weight of their expectations. "We are here to unveil the truth," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty within. "A truth that has been hidden from you, a conspiracy that threatens not only our planet but our very existence." As she spoke, she could see the flicker of recognition in the crowd, whispers spreading like wildfire. "The Council has been manipulating our fate, pushing us toward a war that will destroy everything we hold dear. We've uncovered their plans for a weapon that could obliterate Valeria and enslave our own people." The crowd reacted, gasps echoing in the square. Drax stepped beside her, his hand resting protectively on her back. "Together, we can stop this madness. We must unite against the Council's tyranny." Suddenly, a sharp sound pierced the air. Nara's heart dropped as she recognized the signal, an urgent message from her commander on Valeria. If Drax does not comply, the voice echoed in her mind, "Eliminate him." Panic surged through her. She shot a quick glance at Drax, who was lost in the fervor of his speech, unaware of the impending danger. The crowd's energy surged, and she knew she had to act fast. "Drax," she called, her voice rising above the noise, desperation lacing her words. "We have to." Before she could finish, chaos erupted. A group of armed guards, loyal to the Council, surged toward the platform, weapons drawn. The crowd gasped, and Drax's expression shifted from passion to alarm. "Stay back," he shouted, stepping in front of Nara, but she could see the fear in his eyes. Nara's mind raced. She had to protect him. With her heart pounding, she pushed past the crowd, her instincts kicking in. She had infiltrated Zyron to gather information, to betray, and now she found herself at a crossroads, loyalty to her mission or to the man she had grown to care for. "Drax!" she screamed, urgency fueling her voice as she reached for him, but the guards were closing in, and the crowd was beginning to panic. In that moment, everything hung in the balance, and the choice she made would determine not just their fate, but the fate of two worlds. As the chaos erupted around them, Nara's heart raced with conflicting emotions. She had just delivered a powerful speech, igniting hope among the crowd, but now, the atmosphere was thick with danger. Drax stood frozen, confusion etched on his handsome features as Zyron's loyalists surged forward, weapons drawn. The look in his eyes pierced through her, a mix of fear and disbelief. "Nara! What are you doing? You need to get out of here. Drax shouted over the din, his voice barely rising above the chaos. Ignoring his command, she instinctively stepped closer, her mind racing with possibilities. She could feel the heat of the moment enveloping her, each second stretching into eternity. She had always been a skilled spy, adept at assessing situations, but this was different. This was personal. I won't leave you, she replied, her voice steady despite the tremors in her body. We can do this together. I can help you. In that instant, Nara made a split-second decision. She reached into her pocket and activated the device she had painstakingly copied from the weapon blueprints. It was a risk, but it was their only chance. The crowd was a sea of panic, but her voice cut through the noise as she shouted, "Everyone, step back." As she pressed the button, a brilliant light erupted from the device, blinding the chaos momentarily. The air crackled with energy, and a wave of electromagnetic pulse surged outward, sweeping through Zyron's military systems like a tidal wave. She watched in awe as the soldiers' weapons sputtered and died, their expressions shifting from aggression to confusion. What just happened? Drax exclaimed, eyes wide as he grasped her arm, pulling her closer. I disabled their systems, Nara declared, relief flooding through her. Now we can turn the tide. The crowd, initially paralyzed with fear, began to rally behind Nara and Drax. The rebels, emboldened by the sudden turn of events, surged forward, reclaiming the momentum. Drax looked at Nara with newfound respect, admiration shining in his eyes. You are incredible, he said, a hint of awe coloring his tone. We can win this. But Nara shook her head, her thoughts racing. This isn't just about winning, Drax. We have to reshape the future, not just for Zyron but for Valeria too. Together, they fought side by side, a united front against the oppressive regime. Nara's heart raced as she felt the thrill of battle, but it was more than that. It was the realization that she was no longer just a spy on a mission. She was part of something greater, a movement towards freedom and unity. As the dust began to settle, the last of Zyron's loyalists were either captured or fled. Nara and Drax stood amidst the remnants of the chaos, breathing heavily, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Nara, you have become a symbol of unity, Drax stated, his voice firm and steady. You've ignited a fire in our people. Together, we can build a new era. Nara could hardly believe the words. She had come to Zyron with a singular mission, to spy and gather information, but now she found herself at the forefront of a revolution. Yes, she replied, her voice steady, but we must be careful not to repeat the mistakes of the past. We have to listen to the voices of the people. Drax nodded, determination set in his features. I promise you, Nara, I will work towards peace and ensure that the Council no longer holds power over us. In that moment, as she looked into his eyes, Nara felt a profound sense of purpose. Her mission had transformed into something far more critical than espionage. It was about reshaping the destiny of two planets. As the sun began to set over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the battlefield, Nara realized that the fight for freedom was just beginning, but now she would not be alone. Together with Drax and the rebels, they would forge a new path, one where Valeria and Zyron could coexist, free from tyranny. The future, once clouded with uncertainty, now gleamed with possibility.